Hello and good day to everyone who are tuning in with beritabaru.co for this week's international session of Bercerita, supported by the Reform Initiative. This is Lukman Hakim hosting for today's program, where we will talk about how the international community responds to the Myanmar crisis. Now, a short profile of Myanmar, also known as Burma. It has a population of about 54 million. It gained independence from Britain in 1948 and was ruled by the armed forces from 1962 until 2011, when the new government began ushering in a return to civilian rule. Now, on February 1st, 2021, the day before the Parliament of Myanmar was due to swear in the winners of the 2020 election, the Myanmar military, the Tatmadaw, has taken control over the country under a state of emergency, following a general election they claim was fraudulent. Responding to the coup, peaceful protests, civil disobedience, and general strikes were held by citizens, but the military responded back with force. Now, the United Nations Secretary General and the United Nations Human Rights Council and the Special Rapporteur for Human Rights in Myanmar have all condemned the violence in the strongest possible terms.
Hi.
Hello, Ms. Wai Hnin. Hi. Now, Ms. Wai Hnin is a Burmese human rights defender and a senior advocacy officer working in research, advocacy, and campaign-focused roles with the London-based Burma Campaign Uk. Ms. Wai Hnin, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, that's good. Now, since February 1st, the coup by the military, she has worked extensively to mobilize international action against the military and assisting the media with information. She has spoken with members of parliament in the UK and other countries as well, lobbied governments all over the world, and provided evidence at a United States hearing. So, Ms. Wai Hnin, thank you for coming today. Welcome to today's Bercerita program. So, how are you today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, audience, if you have questions for Ms. Wai Hnin, you can type them out in our chat box, and I'll read them out at the end of this segment. Before we start our segment, I wanted to ask you, during our research for searching for Myanmar, we noticed there are two words between Myanmar and Burma. So can you tell us in short, what is the difference between the two?
The military dictatorship changed their name from Burma to Myanmar in 1989 because they thought Burma has the colonial sentiment. But the name was changed without consulting any ethnic minorities or anyone on the ground. So people who are traditionally involved in politics or democracy movement, they call Burma. Especially ethnic minority feels that the Myanmar doesn't represent their ethnic identity. So, but nowadays we use Myanmar, Burma, so it doesn't really matter.
Okay. So, thank you for the short explanation. So, my first question for Ms. Wai Hnin, can you share with us about the recent situation in Myanmar? Because it has been a few months since the coup, and also there's a lot of military force as well. So, what is happening right now?
So since 1st of February, the military staged the coup, people in Burma are living in fear. There are ongoing arrests every day, during the day, during the night as well. And we now have more than 3,000, it's a growing number of political prisoners in the country. And more than 700 people have been killed, but that's only in the city area. And in ethnic area as well, the military is attacking ethnic civilians, and fighter jets are bombing and killing civilians. So human rights violations are continuing and happening across the country. And the situation is getting worse and worse since the military took over on 1st of February.
Okay, so we also noticed about the telecommunication blackout, the internet blackout. Is it still happening until now?
Yes, it is. So there is a restrictions on internet cut and also mobile data. So it was done systematically to control the flow of information going out of the country and people from communicating with each other and sharing data and mobilizing the protest movement. So it's an assault on freedom of expression in the country.
Okay, so there hasn't been any much changes since February 1st up until now. But is the situation worse in the capital city of Myanmar and in large cities in Yangon compared to like in rural areas? Because we also know that there's also some small civil fight as well in rural areas, including what happened with the Rohingya at the borderlines of Myanmar. So how is it compared between the urban cities and rural as well?
So human rights violations are happening across the country. So if we separate two issues, then in the city area, people are protesting, peacefully protesting. They're being shot and they're being, violently attacked and killed, and they've been arrested. So that's one type of human rights abuses in city areas. But in ethnic area, what's going on is the military is attacking ethnic civilians and ethnic armed organizations. So we now have more than 50,000 people fleeing from their villages because the fighter jets are bombing and killing them. So that's in Karen and Kachin ethnic area. And so if we look at the Rohingya issue, we still have many Rohingya refugees living in Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh. And there are, they don't have any human rights and they don't have any humanitarian aid or education. So that's another desperate situation done by the Burmese military.
Okay, so the problem extends to also in rural areas as well. And are people able to live their daily lives right now, or are they actually, or their daily lives are disrupted? They're completely not normal compared to before the coup.
It's not normal anymore, unfortunately, and it's very sad because since the coup started, people are living in fear. They don't know when soldiers will burst into their home, arresting them or killing them. And in the evening, some people are even afraid to switch the light on because soldiers are shooting into homes when they saw the light on. So that's not a normal life. Everyone is living in fear.
Oh, okay, that's so. About this situation, you have spoken to in international communities, and you have spoken also at the U.S. Senate, where U.S. President Joe Biden and former U.S. President Barack Obama's finally spoken about pressuring the Myanmar military to stop the violence against civilians and threaten harsh sanctions. Do you think this kind of international pressure is being paid attention to by the Myanmar military?
Definitely, yes. The problem and the frustration we face is that there hasn't been enough international action. So we've been, lobbying the governments all over the world to take effective action against the military. So the US has put some Burmese generals on their designated, like visa ban list, and they froze some of the assets owned by the Burmese general. But the problem is Burmese generals don't have any assets in the UK or in the US. So essentially what it means is a holiday ban. They're not allowed to come to the US on a holiday or a shopping trip. So, but there are also some sanctions on military conglomerates, which is very welcome. But there are many other things that need to be done. One of the main things is accountability. These military generals need to be held accountable for all the crimes that they have committed, not just during the coup, but also previously against the Rohingya minority, ethnic minorities, and all other parts of the country.
Okay, so do you think that the sanctions, if there are sanctions by the international community, would it actually matter for the military?
Definitely, yes. If we look at the country history and how we achieve or how, why we had reform in 10 years ago. Burma was getting poorer and poorer because there were sanctions placed on the country. Normal people were affected as well because it was not smart or targeted sanctions against military, but it was a blanket sanctions. But the military was very frustrated that they couldn't do any business with outside walls, so they started reform a few political systems. They introduced a military drafted constitution and turned the country into a quasi-democracy because they wanted those sanctions lifted. So that's why now what we are calling for is a targeted, smart economic sanctions on military companies, so we cut their money because they care about their pocket. And when we cut the money, they won't be able to buy weapons either. So we are also calling for the global arms embargo to stop the weapons going in and out of the country.
How about about imports of material goods that is important for the civilians? Is it still available right now? About food and emergency supplies and everything, is it being stopped by the military?
So traditionally, it's always been the military blocked the humanitarian aid. Part of the thing we are calling for the UN and other humanitarian agencies is to allow, especially ASEAN countries, to allow cross-border aid to be delivered to people who are in need. If you go through the military, they will always be, they will always take those food rather than giving people who are fleeing from their villages. So we've been encouraging Thailand and other countries to allow the cross-border aid to be delivered, and UN has the part to play as well to make that happen.
Okay, so I wanted to speak with the audience first. If you have any questions for this session, you can also type them out in chat box and I'll read them out at the end of the segment. Jadi kalau misalkan ada pertanyaan bisa ditulis saja di chat boxnya, nanti biar saya bacakan di akhir segmen. Okay, so there are still countries, right? The help and responses from the international communities are inconclusive, inconsistent to say the least. Some countries are supporting for sanctions, heavier sanctions, but there are also countries that quite hesitate in doing so. How is the response from the Myanmar citizens themselves about the countries that does not hesitate to make such sanctions?
Just to be clear, when we are talking about sanctions now, we are talking about, again, a smart and targeted, targeting the military companies and military families. So we are not calling for bans on trade privileges or ban on imports because that will hurt normal, ordinary people. And people inside the country are already boycotting military products because they know that the money that they use to buy the military products will go towards oppressing, themselves. So international community should support that call and sanctions military companies. All those money they get will not be used towards building schools or hospitals or to help people. It will be used to produce more weapons, buy more weapons, and oppress people. So that's the sanctions that we are calling for, not the blanket sanctions.
Okay, so in also in recent report, there is a report that said the leader of junta, the Senator General Min Aung Hlaing, has attended the ASEAN summit in Jakarta, and that resulted in the 5-point consensus. So, what do you think about this ASEAN summit consensus?
Well, first of all, let's start with the positive. We have to thank Indonesia and Malaysia to taking the lead in solving the problems in Burma at the moment. But inviting Min Aung Hlaing to ASEAN Summit was a mistake because he was giving a podium to spread his propaganda. And we didn't, even on the day that he was attending the ASEAN Summit, there were violence going on the ground. Although he said, he wants dialogue. Who was he going to have a dialogue with? Because most people in the oppositions are being locked up or in hiding. And with the decision that came out of the ASEAN summit, didn't call for the release of all detainees. So it was overall very disappointing. And on top of all that is it's an insult to people inside the country who are asking for the democratically elected government to be recognized and to be invited rather than made online. So it's disappointing.
Other, in ASEAN, there's also other ASEAN bodies like the AICHR. They're also responding to the Myanmar government. Do you really think that responses from the ASEAN community in general is adequate enough in responding to the crisis?
Traditionally, a response from ASEAN has been weak because it always been, taking the stance of non-interference, non-partial response from the ASEAN. But, in terms of calls like sanctions or global arms embargo, it will be great for ASEAN to work together with other countries to make that happen. So ASEAN actually has a power, but the problem is they've always taken that non-interference approach, and I think it needs to change and realize that what's happening in Burma at the moment is not an internal issue. It will have a huge impact on the neighboring country and geopolitics, and we are facing a huge humanitarian crisis as well.
Okay, so what has been done, especially from that has been done by the international communities right now for the Myanmar? Has ASEAN also delivered humanitarian aid as well?
No, not at the moment. And what's been done from the international community is a lot of statements. We have seen a lot of statements since the beginning, and so we need more than statements. We are seeing sanctions being placed by the US and the UK and EU, which is very welcome. And the next step we are asking for is to stop the revenue going from oil, gas, timber and jams to the military, because now the military control the government. They will get all those revenues, so they will have more money. So we are asking for that as a next step. And then the other call we are asking for is the global arms embargo, stop weapons going inside the country and hold their generals accountable.
So you also mentioned about that you're helping political prisoners that's being detained right now. Many of them are civilians who joined the democracy protest after the February 1st. Can you tell us about the experience in campaigning for this to release the political prisoners?
It's a very long process, unfortunately. Even under the civilian government, we had political prisoners in the country, but now we have a growing numbers. Every day people are getting arrested for speaking out or simply just walking down the street. If I were in Burma right now, I would be arrested for speaking out or wearing black, because they are starting to arrest people who are wearing black and carrying backpacks, and I wear black a lot, so I will be arrested for sure. So they are targeting individuals who might be speaking out, or they're arresting anyone they see. So in terms of calling for the release, working on political prisoner issues, I have a personal experience with my dad, so I have a better understanding of how to approach family and be comforting and be encouraging. But it's getting harder and harder every day because there's a huge amount of work to be done.
So just to clear up here, has the detention by the military are getting increasing each day, or has it slowed down since the beginning of the coup?
No, it hasn't slowed down at all. It's continuing every day, and every evening on state TV they are announcing who is going to be charged under incitement for speaking out. So they brought in a new law which is very broad, and it can be used against anyone. For if they think they're against it's the military, then they can be arrested. So the arrest continues day and night.
Oh, so these political prisoners. How about the situation with the president Aung San Suu Kyi also being held right now? How is he? How is she doing? And how is everyone, the political prisoners, the higher ups in the Myanmar government? Are they being treated well compared to the citizens? Because from our research, the citizens also receive more crackdown. How about the political prisoners?
We don't know where Aung San Suu Kyi is being held, but she's been charged and she's on trial. And of course, the treatment towards Aung San Suu Kyi, the senior people and the normal day-to-day people are different. And we know there are so many cases of tortured in detention center before they're being sent to insane prison in Yangon or other prison across the country. And there are cases of sexual assault against women in detention as well. So the treatments towards ordinary people are more dire than senior people.
Okay, so because of this crisis, UNDP made a report that the COVID-19 and the political crisis in Myanmar would force up to 25 million people into poverty by early 2022, especially when it's happening right in the middle of the pandemic. So do you agree with that figure? About the assessment from the UNDP? And so, what do you think about the UN? How that they should address the situation?
Yes, it's a very depressing situation because even before the coup, we were having, people were losing jobs and people were losing income. And because of coup, a lot of people are getting involved, taking part in a civil disobedience movement, which means they stop going to work in protest of the coup. They are willing to sacrifice their income. They are willing to sacrifice everything because, they're determined to stop this military dictatorship. We don't want to live under another military dictatorship again. But the international community support has been so slow and so weak. So the UN, what they can do is the UN Security General should get on the plane, go to Burma and meet the military and talk with them rather than issuing statement after statement, because it stopped being encouraging a long time ago whenever we see a statement. And also they should allow the cross-border aid to be delivered to people who are in need. And UN has a role to play that. And funding, if they should find alternative funding using cross-border aid mechanism.
How has been the United Nations role in Myanmar before the coup was happening? Are they providing a good responses to the Myanmar, because they're also in Myanmar? They already made some aid before. So do you think that they will be effective in comparing with how they responded previously?
That's why I was talking about the cross-border aid, because if you're going via the military who is attacking and making people flee their home, how can they be effective, or how can they be able to help people delivering aid to people who they are attacking? So we need to find a smarter way, and we need to find an alternative way of delivering aid. And I think sometimes aid agencies are so stuck in bureaucracy and trying to go through the state agency. So I think, and also the root causes of all this poverty and all these problems is the military. So we need to get country to take action against the military so that Burma can move past the poverty line.
Okay, so your organization, you're with the Burma Campaign UK. Your efforts in campaigning for human rights and democracy in Myanmar. So what has been the Burma Campaign UK efforts?
So, since the coup started, we have been assisting media with information, and we've been working with human rights activists and grassroots organizations on the ground to make sure that their voices are being heard by the international community. And we coordinate in our advocacy and campaigning call so that we all have the united call. And also, we've been helping people flee from city area to escape arrest, because we work with a lot of activists, and so we are helping with their safe houses and helping them flee. And also we are helping people in ethnic area, because there are now more than 50,000 fleeing their home. They don't have any shelters, and rainy season is coming, so we are providing funds for shelters, everyday essentials, and other needs that they may have.
So what is your assessment of how many people currently right now are in need of help from the military, the one that you say that they want to flee? I've seen some people also fleeing to Thailand, and have they also fleeing to overseas as well?
So the figure I have from Kachin and Karen state is over 50,000 people, but that doesn't include people who are already fleeing in Chin state and other parts of ethnic area, and that doesn't include people who left via official channels. When you're asking how many people are in need, it's the whole country, apart from the military, of course, because the military is not only attacking people, but also they're using fear and violence to stop people from speaking out, stop people from protesting. So, human rights violations are continuing every day, and people are desperate for help. So when you look at pictures of protests and everything inside the country, they are written in English because they want the international community to help. They are asking for UN to intervene. They are asking for international community to help in any way that they can, and they are risking their life to call those action. But so far, like I said, the response being so weak, and it's so frustrating.
So what are the challenges in evacuating these people usually that happens in the field? Has there been any challenges coming from the military? What are the challenges that's been facing by Burma Campaign UK?
We work with a lot of human rights organizations on the ground, so they are doing the actual work. So we might be only helping with reports or financial needs that they may have. But since even with the reform process started 10 years ago, we hadn't stopped working, because the conflict in ethnic areas was increased. The attack by the military was increasing, in ethnic area. So this issue of internally displaced people in ethnic area hadn't stopped. It's just now increased in terms of needs and in terms of numbers.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Wai Hnin. So we're now going to ask questions from the public, from the viewers. There is one question. So for everyone who's just tuning in, we're right now with Ms. Wai Hnin. She's from Burma Campaign UK. We're talking about the global response about the Myanmar crisis. And first question is from Merah Berseri. They asking about Myanmar conditions. So what do you think is I know you have said this before, but what is the most urgent response from the international community that the Myanmar needed? The most urgent one.
The most urgent one. So Myanmar is facing a lot of human rights problems, humanitarian problems. The most urgent one is from the international community is to take effective action against the military, to tackle the root causes of the problem, because we are facing all these problems because of the military. They are the one committing all these crimes. So we need to get the international community to come together to take effective action against the military, hold them accountable, so that Burma can actually move towards, working towards a federal democracy. So we need to tackle the root causes of the problem, and it's the military.
Okay. There's also another question. So the Democratic National League, they're the winner of the 2020 election and currently the ruling and also the people-supported party. So what are they doing right now in responding to the situation in Myanmar?
So they formed a new government in April. It's called the National Unity Government. So they won the election in November last year with the landslide victory. But that's the problem with the military, and that's how they staged the coup. So all these elected MPs who are in hiding or who were able to escape form the government, and they are bringing in ethnic minorities from different parts of Burma, and they are bringing in educated young people and other human rights activists across the country. So we have a new government called National Unity Government. It's more inclusive, and they are working towards to be more inclusive than the previous National League for Democracy. But there is a legitimacy issue. So they are asking for the international community to be recognized, to recognize them as a legitimate government elected by the people, not the military. So they are working towards that, and they've been speaking out on human rights abuses as well.
Okay, so about the Myanmar diaspora and international community, what have they done in responding to the Myanmar crisis?
So they've been doing every day. So we all been doing everything we can, and we are playing a part in this in a way that we can as well. So we've seen people speaking out on social media and also meeting foreign governments, lobbying them to help people in Burma and to take action. And just on Sunday, there was a global action, a global protest. You could see protests, Burmese community across the world are organizing protests. So everyone is doing whatever we can, because we are completely determined and we are sure more than 100% that we don't want to live under a military dictatorship, and this military has to go once and for all.
So for Burma Campaign UK, what will be the closest campaign that you're going to do, the activity that you're going to do in the future?
Sadly, for political prisoners campaign, it's so we are going to be continue focusing on human rights abuses. So that includes ethnic conflict in the country, political prisoners, and also we will make sure, we've been working to bring international action against the military. So we will be continuing on that.
Okay. So thank you very much. One last question, Ms. Wine. I think there's a lot of people joining in, but I think all the questions have already answered. So this last questions, do you have any, since the program is about telling a story, do you have any memorable moments when working with to release political prisoners? And as you said, your father is also a political prisoner as well. Is he also detained right now as well?
He was arrested on 1st of February, early in the morning. 5 soldiers came to the house to arrest him. And for 2 months, we had no idea where he was being detained or what his condition was. But on 1st of April, we found out that he's been sent to insane prison in Yangon, and he's been tried for hate speech, which is diabolical, because my father always worked for peace and reconciliation in the country. So he's on trial, but trials are being held inside prison at the moment. So families and public are not allowed to go inside and see them. And we know almost everyone will be sentenced. So trials are just formalities, and there is no rule of law. So this is his third arrest.
Well, I'm so sorry for the situation. I hope that everything will be improved. So thank you very much, Ms. Wai Hnin, for your time for Bercerita. For our audience, well, if you're late in tuning into our show, you don't have to worry because this interview has been recorded and will be posted to our beritabaru.co YouTube channel and in our Berita Baru podcast in audio form. Ms. Wai Hnin, do you have any last words for our audience?
I would like to say thank you for joining in, and also please continue supporting human rights in Burma, and please continue helping people in Burma. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Wai Hnin. So, viewers, I'll see you again next time for another edition of Bercerita every Tuesday. For next week, we're going to have another Indonesian edition, and I'll see you again another time. Bye. Bye, Ms. Wai Hnin. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.